Polygamy. Now, if you're one of those people who is apprehensive about the subject of polygamy, like maybe you don't understand it, you don't approve of it, to be honest, you are not alone. There are many people, both inside and outside the church, who don't quite understand polygamy and are not comfortable with it. In fact, I'll be honest with you, this is not one of my favorite subjects to talk about because I just don't like the subject all that much. But I've seen so many misconceptions about polygamy regarding the LDS Church that I knew it was important that I post a video about it. So here we go. The shortest way to describe the LDS Church and the practice of polygamy is by saying this: yes, we did, and no, we don't. Okay? So let's go to the church history. In the 1800s, polygamy was practiced in the LDS Church because of what Mormons believe was a revelation given to the prophet Joseph Smith at the time. Now, it's interesting to note that in biblical times, polygamy was permitted to be practiced during some times, like with Abraham or Jacob, but then in other times, it was not permitted, like in the New Testament days. But there really is no official reason that is described in the Bible, so we kind of take it on faith. Now, similarly, during the 19th century, for about a 50-year period, Mormons believe God commanded some Mormons to practice polygamy, and there were 3 reasons given specifically for that. The first reason was an ancient practice needed to be restored in order to fulfill a prophecy. So that was the first reason given. The second reason was that God wanted to help jumpstart membership in the LDS Church because we believe that we're a restored church from ancient times and that He wanted to create more members, and if there's more women who are married and having children, then there's more membership. So that was reason number 2. Regarding reason number 3, Mormons believe that while you don't have to be married to go to the celestial kingdom, which is the highest kingdom of heaven, within that celestial kingdom, and you can find more information about that in my after death video, by the way, but within the celestial kingdom there are varying degrees, and the top degree can only be obtained by those who are married. Polygamy allowed more women specifically the opportunity to reach the highest kingdom, which anticipated a shortage of worthy men, I guess. So that was the third reason given. Now, all that being said, I understand that it's still a little bit confusing. We don't have all the answers, and that's the truth. We really don't have all the reasons why polygamy was permitted to be practiced in the LDS Church or in biblical times. But going back to church history, so in 1890, the commandment to practice polygamy in the LDS Church was lifted, and then in 1904, it was commanded by God to the prophet that polygamy no longer be practiced on this earth. So since then, polygamy is no longer a practice in the LDS Church. It was just during that about 50-year period in the 19th century. Now, you could even say that the quickest way to excommunication in the LDS Church is to begin practicing polygamy. You could even go further and say that today there is no such thing as a Mormon polygamist. It's an oxymoron. It doesn't exist. Now, the public, we've noticed, doesn't quite understand these concepts. In fact, according to Lawrence research, 46% of Americans still believe that Mormons practice polygamy, which is interesting because that means that perhaps half of America believes that I will be one of multiple wives someday. Not on your life. I, first of all, am having trouble practicing monogamy right now, but practicing polygamy, no. If I find Mr. Right, or I should say when I find Mr. Right, I ain't sharing, not a chance. I am so grateful that polygamy has not been commanded to be practiced while I exist on this earth. Now, a lot of this confusion about Mormons practicing polygamy still, according to what people think, comes from the more than 150 groups that have branched off from the LDS Church, and some of them do still continue to practice polygamy. But these are not Mormons. Even though some of them do read the Book of Mormon, their names have been removed from church records and they are within their own church. It's also interesting to note that there are about 80,000 people in the United States who practice polygamy, and about half of them claim Mormon origins. The others claim origins from some other source. TV and media also plays into this whole misconception of polygamy and Mormons, like with shows like Big Love or Sister Wives that are associated with the state of Utah. And the state of Utah is clearly known for having a large Mormon population, so that association alone, in addition to other things in those shows, makes it seem like like Mormons today are linked to polygamy when they really aren't. So we're anxious to get that word out there, make sure people understand that Mormons don't practice polygamy anymore, but we did in the past. That is part of our history for sure. Before I close, I wanted to also address that I've received a few messages from people with a little bit of hateful terminology, I'll even say, saying that Joseph Smith, who Mormons believe was a prophet, was a sex-crazed scumbag who just wanted to marry a bunch of women in order to have sex with all these women. Now, I've looked into this claim, as well as other people, other authors and such, to find out what the truth is, because let's be honest, none of us, the critics or us Mormons, were alive during the times of Joseph Smith, so we can go back to the records. And the evidence, as I've read and as other people have read, shows quite the opposite. In fact, new evidence has come out recently, and I'll include links in the video description, showing that Joseph Smith was more of a reluctant polygamist. He wasn't exactly thrilled about the idea of practicing polygamy, but God made it very clear, a few times actually, before he actually practiced polygamy, that that was what was going to need to happen. And so Joseph Smith agreed to do it because God is all-knowing and you follow God's advice, right? Or commandments even. But Joseph Smith wasn't only just a reluctant polygamist, he treated his wives very kindly. In fact, Joseph Smith himself was martyred in his 30s, and even after that, his wives never said anything critical about him. They said he was a loving person. He genuinely cared about mankind. He wasn't this sex-crazed maniac like people say, according to the evidence. So if you have that opinion of Joseph Smith being this scumbag, I challenge you to click on the links that I've included in the video description, do the research, and read the documentation that was written by those who knew him. And then decide for yourself what that documentation means, because I have seen quite the opposite. The people, in fact, really did think very highly of him, and that he wasn't what people claim he is. If you want to take a deeper dive into the subject of polygamy, including the subject of polyandry, which is another subject that is filled with misconceptions and falsehoods, I have listed a number of resources in the video description. Videos, great books that have come out, and some of them very recent. In conclusion, I just wanted to say that I'm very happy that monogamy is the way to go. Hopefully I'll get there someday. Yay, monogamy! Wow, cheese ball. Anyway, you heard it from the Mormon next door.